Imagine calling the police on an innocent man just because of his skin color, only to discover he's actually the billionaire CEO of your company. What follows is a revenge so cold, so flawlessly executed, it leaves everyone speechless. This isn't just justice, it's a masterpiece of payback. Shocked by this revenge? Hit that subscribe button. Every click helps us bring you more jaw-dropping stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next twist. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. The stale office air hummed with fluorescent lights and quiet desperation. Sarah Miller clicked her pen, a sharp, impatient sound that echoed louder than it should in the open-plan space of Technova Solutions. Her eyes, a cold, watery blue, scanned the room, perpetually searching for something or someone to disapprove of. Today, they landed and stuck on James. He was leaning over Maya Sharma's desk, pointing at something on her screen, his deep voice a low rumble Sarah strained to hear. James was new, quiet, kept himself mostly. But to Sarah, his very presence was an intrusion. His dark skin, his calm confidence as he navigated the unfamiliar corporate maze, it all grated against her narrow world. Sarah watched them, her lip curling slightly. Maya laughed softly at something James said. Too familiar, Sarah thought, her knuckles whitening around the pen. Asterisk, he doesn't know his place. Asterisk, she pushed her chair back, the scrape loud on the thin carpet, and marched over, her heels tapping a staccato rhythm of irritation. Problem here, Sarah's voice was brittle, cutting through the low office murmur. Maya looked up, startled. James straightened slowly, turning to face Sarah. His expression was neutral, but his dark eyes held a stillness Sarah found unsettling. Just helping Maya with the Henderson report interface, Sarah, James said, his voice calm, measured. It's throwing an error she hadn't seen before. Helping, Sarah scoffed, her voice rising slightly. Several nearby heads turned. Looks like you're crowding her. Personal space, James? Ever heard of it? She took a deliberate step closer to him, invading his space aggressively. Seems like you need a reminder. James didn't flinch. He met her gaze evenly. Sarah, I was simply showing her a drop-down menu. There's no crowding happening. Don't you tell me what I see. Sarah snapped, her face flushing. I see you leaning over her, bothering her, making her uncomfortable. This isn't the first time, either. I've seen you watching people. Hovering. Her accusations flew, sharp and baseless, fueled by a venomous prejudice she wore like armor. Maya looked horrified. Sarah, no. He was just helping. Quiet, Maya. Sarah cut her off, her finger jabbing towards James. You think you can just come in here and act however you please? With your attitude? The unspoken slur hung heavy in the air between them. I won't tolerate harassment in my department. James took a slow breath. The office was utterly silent now, every eye fixed on the confrontation. Sarah, he said, his voice dangerously quiet, you are mistaken, deeply mistaken, and you are creating a hostile environment right now. Hostile? Me? Sarah let out a shrill, disbelieving laugh. You're the one making threats. I feel threatened. I feel harassed. Her voice climbed higher, becoming almost hysterical. She fumbled in her pocket, pulling out her phone. That's it. I'm calling security. No, the police. I'm not safe with you here. James's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A flicker of something cold, something assessing. He didn't try to stop her. He didn't plead. He just watched as Sarah, with trembling, self-righteous fingers, dialed 911. Yes, hello? Police? I'm at Technova Solutions, downtown. I need help. There's a man here. He's harassing me. He's aggressive. He won't leave me alone. He just threatened me. Black male, tall, wearing a gray shirt. James. James something. Please hurry. I feel unsafe. She hung up, breathing heavily, a triumphant, vindicated gleam in her eyes as she glared at James. The office was a tableau of shock and discomfort. Maya looked like she might cry. Others shifted awkwardly in their seats, unwilling to get involved but clearly disturbed by Sarah's blatant fabrication. James remained statue still. Only his hands, loosely clasped in front of him, betrayed a slight tension. That, he said, his voice so low only Sarah and the closest few could hear it clearly, was a very serious mistake, Sarah Miller. Sarah recoiled slightly, surprised by the absolute lack of fear in his tone. "What did you say?" He didn't repeat it. He just held her gaze, the weight of his unspoken promise settling over her like a sudden chill. The distant wail of sirens began to pierce the afternoon quiet, growing louder, closer. Blue lights painted the concrete walls visible through the large windows, flashing rhythmically against the gray office interior. Within minutes, 2 uniformed officers entered the tense silence of the Technova floor. Sarah practically flew towards them, pointing dramatically at James. "That's him. That's the man. He's been harassing me all afternoon. He got aggressive when I told him to stop." The officers approached James cautiously. He remained calm, his hands visible. "Officers," he said, his voice level and respectful. "My name is James Thorne. I'm an employee here. Ms. Miller's accusations are completely false. She initiated this confrontation because she objected to me assisting a colleague." "Don't listen to him," Sarah shrieked. "He's lying. He cornered me. He made me feel terrified." One officer, a seasoned man with tired eyes, looked from Sarah's flushed, agitated face to James's composed demeanor. "Sir, we need to get statements from everyone involved. Ms. Miller has made a serious allegation. We'll need you to come down to the station to sort this out." James nodded slowly. "I understand procedure, officer. I will cooperate fully. However," he added, his gaze flickering back to Sarah, who wore a smug expression, "I strongly suggest you also take detailed statements from every witness present. The truth has a way of revealing itself." He held out his wrists, not in surrender, but with a quiet dignity that made the younger officer hesitate for a fraction of a second before reaching for his cuffs. The metallic click echoed obscenely in the silent office. Sarah watched, a cruel satisfaction twisting her lips as the officers led James away, his head held high. She felt powerful, righteous. She'd put him in his place. The whispers started as soon as the elevator doors closed behind them. Whispers of disbelief, of outrage on James's behalf, but also fearful glances towards Sarah. She was dangerous. Later that evening, Sarah left the office feeling victorious, if slightly drained. The police had taken statements, including Maya's tearful insistence that James had done nothing wrong. But Sarah had doubled down, spinning a tale of subtle intimidation and veiled threats that painted James as a predator. The uncertainty, the he said, she said nature of it hung in the air. James was released without charges that night, but the stain was there. Sarah had planted the seed of doubt. Walking into the dimly lit underground parking garage, Sarah fished for her keys. The victory felt hollow suddenly in the echoing silence. The sharp tap of her heels was the only sound. Then another sound, soft, deliberate, footsteps, unhurried, coming from the shadows near the concrete pillars. Sarah froze, her heart lurching. She peered into the gloom. James Thorne stepped into the weak pool of light cast by a flickering overhead lamp. He wasn't in cuffs now. He wore a dark, impeccably tailored coat she'd never seen before. His expression was unreadable, carved from stone. He held no weapon, made no threatening gesture. He simply stood there, blocking the path to her car. "Sarah," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried perfectly in the cavernous space, devoid of its earlier calm. It was cold, hard, utterly controlled. "You made a spectacle today. You lied to the police. You tried to destroy my life, my reputation, based on nothing but the color of my skin and your own pathetic hatred." Sarah's bravado evaporated, replaced by a primal fear that crawled up her spine. "Get away from me," she stammered, taking a step back. "I'll call the police again. I'll scream." James smiled. It was a chilling sight devoid of warmth. "Scream all you like. The cameras on this level," he gestured vaguely upwards, "have been offline for maintenance since noon. Convenient, isn't it?" He took a slow step forward. "You see, Sarah, you operate on the belief that the system protects people like you. that your lies hold weight simply because you say them. You wield prejudice like a blunt weapon. He took another step. Sarah scrambled backwards, her back hitting the cold metal of a parked van. "What do you want?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I want you to understand the cost," James said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet every word felt like a shard of ice. "The cost of your cruelty. The cost of your lies. You targeted the wrong person today, Sarah Miller. You see, I'm not just James from accounting." He paused, letting the silence stretch, thick with dread. "My full name is James Thorne, as in Thorne Industries, the company that quietly acquired Technova Solutions 3 months ago." Sarah's blood ran cold. Technova's mysterious, unseen new owner? The billionaire CEO who never visited, who operated through intermediaries. The rumors had flown, but no one knew who it was. Impossible. This quiet, unassuming black man she tried to destroy? Dizziness washed over her. "I'm the CEO, Sarah," James continued, his dark eyes pinning her in place. "And you just publicly slandered and falsely accused the owner of the company you work for of a serious crime. On company premises, in front of multiple witnesses. You didn't just make a mistake today. You committed professional suicide. And you handed me all the leverage I could ever need." He took the final step, stopping mere inches from her. She could smell the faint, expensive scent of his cologne, see the absolute, terrifying certainty in his eyes. There was no rage, only a chilling, calculated purpose. "Your career at Technova is over. That much is inevitable. But understand this. Ruining your job is merely the beginning. It's the absolute minimum consequence for what you did, what you tried to do." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to vibrate in her bones. "You try to weaponize the system against me. Now, I'm going to show you how that system really works. When it's wielded by someone who knows every lever, every weakness, every hidden cost. Your comfortable little world? It ends now. The reckoning starts tomorrow. Sleep well, Sarah, if you can." He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. The sheer, terrifying weight of his words, the impossible revelation of his identity, the absolute certainty of his power, crushed her spirit. He turned on his heel and walked away, his footsteps echoing with finality, disappearing into the shadows of the garage as silently as he had arrived. Sarah Miller slid down the cold metal of the van, collapsing onto the oil-stained concrete, gasping for breath, the echo of his promise. The reckoning starts tomorrow, ringing in her ears, a terrifying drumbeat heralding the ruin of everything she knew. The victory she'd felt earlier was ashes. She hadn't just accused an employee. She declared war on a king, and his vengeance would be anything but sweet. It would be cold, precise, and utterly devastating. Sarah Miller didn't sleep. The echo of James Thorne's, "No, Mr. Thorne's," final words in the garage hammered against her skull like a mallet. Asterisk, the reckoning starts tomorrow. Asterisk, the sterile silence of her apartment felt suffocating, every creak of the floorboards a portent of doom. She spent the night pacing, replaying the confrontation, the phone call, the police, the parking garage revelation. The sheer, impossible scale of her mistake choked her. She hadn't just targeted a colleague. She'd attacked the hidden king of the castle. And kings didn't forgive trespasses. Morning arrived, gray and unwelcome. Getting ready felt like preparing for her own execution. The familiar drive to Technova felt alien, every red light a torture. Pulling into the parking garage sent a fresh wave of icy dread through her. She scanned the shadows near the pillars, half expecting James to materialize again. Nothing. Just the usual concrete gloom and the smell of exhaust. The emptiness felt worse. The office atmosphere was electric with unspoken tension as Sarah entered. Whispers died abruptly. Heads turned, then quickly snapped away. Eyes followed her, filled with a mixture of pity, curiosity, and open hostility. Maya Sharma wouldn't meet her gaze at all, staring fixedly at her screen, her posture rigid. Sarah's usual path to her desk felt like walking a gauntlet. The air hummed not with productivity, but with the low thrum of scandal. She reached her cubicle, her fingers trembling as she logged into her computer. The familiar desktop background offered no comfort. She jumped as her phone rang, the shrill sound like a shriek in the heavy silence. It was an internal call, unknown extension. Her throat tightened. "Sarah Miller," she answered, forcing her voice steady. "Ms. Miller, this is Eleanor Vance from Human Resources." The voice was cool, professional, devoid of warmth. "Please report to conference room B immediately. Bring your employee badge and any company-issued devices." The line went dead. "No pleasantries. No explanación." Just a command. Sarah's heart plummeted. Asterisk, this is it. He's moving fast. Asterisk, she fumbled for her badge, her hands slick with cold sweat. The walk to conference room B felt longer than any corridor she'd ever traversed. Every step echoed the finality of James Thorne's promise. Inside the small, windowless room sat Eleanor Vance, HR director, a woman known for her steely efficiency and impenetrable expression. Beside her sat David Chun, the head of legal, his face a mask of careful neutrality. The air was frigid, smelling faintly of stale coffee and disinfectant. There was no chair pulled out for Sarah. "Ms. Miller, please sit," Eleanor stated, gesturing to the single chair opposite them. Her eyes, sharp as flint, scanned Sarah's pale face. Sarah sat, her knees weak. What is this about?" she asked, hating the tremor in her voice. Eleanor placed a thin manila folder on the table. "This is a formal disciplinary hearing, Ms. Miller, stemming from serious allegations concerning your conduct yesterday afternoon." Allegations? Sarah tried to muster indignation, but it sounded hollow, desperate. "James Thorne started it. He was harassing Maya. Mr. Thorne," David Chun interrupted smoothly, his voice calm but cutting, "is not the subject of this hearing. You are. We have reviewed multiple witness statements, including a detailed account from Maya Sharma, security camera footage from the main floor, and the official police report." Sarah's blood ran cold. Security footage? But he said the garage cameras were offline. "They were," Eleanor confirmed, her gaze unwavering. The main office floor cameras, however, were fully functional. They captured the entirety of your interaction with Mr. Thorne yesterday, from the moment you approached Maya Sharma's desk. Sarah felt the room tilt. They saw everything. They saw her marching over, saw her aggressive posture, heard the audio. Did they have audio? The memory of her own shrill accusations, her deliberate invasion of James's space, flooded back with horrifying clarity. The footage wouldn't show a victim. It would show an aggressor. The footage, Eleanor continued, alongside consistent witness testimonies, contradicts your account entirely, Ms. Miller. It shows you initiating a confrontation with Mr. Thorne. It shows you becoming verbally aggressive and physically intimidating. It shows you making a false report to emergency services, accusing an innocent colleague of a serious crime. David Chun leaned forward slightly. "False reporting to the police is a criminal offense, Ms. Miller. It carries significant legal penalties. Beyond that, your actions constitute gross misconduct under Technova's Code of Conduct. You created a hostile work environment, engaged in discriminatory behavior, and deliberately attempted to damage the reputation of another employee." The words landed like physical blows. Gross misconduct. Discriminatory behavior. Criminal offense. Sarah felt dizzy, nauseous. "He provoked me," she blurted, grasping at straws. "He was condescending. He made me feel." "Ms. Miller," Eleanor's voice cut through sharply, "your feelings, however strong, do not justify fabricating a criminal allegation based on prejudice. The evidence is clear and overwhelming." She opened the folder. "Based on this evidence and the severe nature of your actions, Technova Solutions has no alternative but to terminate your employment, effective immediately." The words hung in the air, final and crushing. Terminated, fired. Not just suspended, not a warning. Gone, just like James said. "Furthermore," David Chin added, his tone chillingly matter-of-fact, "given the potential criminal implications of your false report, Technova will be fully cooperating with any police investigation that may arise from this matter." We will provide all relevant evidence, including the security footage and witness statements. Sarah's vision blurred. Cooperating with the police? Against her? This wasn't just losing her job. This was being thrown to the wolves. James wasn't just firing her. He was setting the legal hounds on her trail. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice cracking. He's the CEO. He's making you do this. This is revenge." Eleanor Vance's expression didn't flicker. "The decision was made based solely on the evidence of your actions, Ms. Miller, in accordance with company policy. Mr. Thorne's position is irrelevant to the facts of your misconduct." She slid a document across the table. "This is your termination notice. Sign here acknowledging receipt. You are required to surrender your badge, keycard, and any company property immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings and leave the premises." Escorted out, like a criminal. Asterisk humiliation burned hotter than fear for a moment. Sarah looked down at the termination notice, the words swimming on the page. It felt unreal, a nightmare. James Thorne hadn't raised his voice in the garage. He hadn't threatened violence. He had simply stated a fact. She had handed him the weapon to destroy her, and he was wielding it with terrifying, impersonal precision. With a shaking hand, she scribbled her name. Eleanor took the badge Sarah numbly handed over. A discreet nod, and the door opened. A uniformed security guard stood there, impassive. "Please follow me, Ms. Miller," he said, his tone neutral. The walk back to her desk was the most excruciating journey of Sarah's life. Eyes bored into her back. Whispers, no longer hushed, followed her. Asterisk fired, asterisk, asterisk serves her right, asterisk, asterisk false report, asterisk, asterisk he's the so, asterisk, the last one, laced with awe and a new kind of fear, echoed louder than the others. People weren't just shocked she was fired. They were reeling from the revelation of James Thorne's true power. Sarah grabbed a small box provided by security and mechanically threw in her framed photos, a spare sweater, her favorite mug. She avoided looking at anyone. Maya was gone. From her desk, perhaps wisely avoiding the spectacle. As she packed the last item, a stress ball she never used, she noticed something tucked behind her monitor stand. A small, plain white envelope. Her name was written on it in a neat, unfamiliar hand. Her breath hitched. The security guard shifted impatiently. "Ms. Miller, please hurry." Ignoring him, her fingers trembling violently, Sarah snatched the envelope and shoved it deep into her pocket. She picked up the pathetic box of her former life. The guard escorted her through the buzzing office, past the stairs, down the elevator, and into the Stark lobby. He stopped at the revolving doors. "You're no longer permitted on Technova property, Ms. Miller. Have a good day." The dismissal was brutal. Sarah stumbled out into the indifferent daylight, the box clutched to her chest like a shield. She made it to her car, fumbling with the keys, tears of rage and terror finally spilling over. She threw the box onto the passenger seat and slammed the door, locking it, as if the building itself might reach out and drag her back. Inside the relative safety of her car, shaking uncontrollably, she pulled the envelope from her pocket. It felt heavy with menace. With trembling fingers, she tore it open. Inside was a single, high-quality photograph. It was a picture of her, taken yesterday afternoon. She was standing near the coffee station, talking animatedly on her personal cell phone. The timestamp on the photo was exactly 5 minutes before she had marched over to confront James at Maya's desk. The angle was impossible. It was taken from high above, looking down, capturing her expression perfectly. Not fearful, not harassed, but animated, even slightly smug. It looked like she was mid-complaint, mid-gossip. Written on the back of the photo, in the same neat hand as the envelope, were 3 words. Evidence collection commenced. No signature, no threat. Just a cold, factual statement. And a horrifying implication. James Thorne had been watching her, recording her, even before she made her catastrophic move. He hadn't just reacted to her attack. He had seemingly anticipated it, or at least positioned himself to capture every damning moment. The revenge wasn't just beginning. It had been meticulously planned, documented, and was now unfolding with terrifying, silent efficiency. The reckoning wasn't just tomorrow. It was already here, and it had proof. Sarah stared at the photo, the image of her own unguarded malice frozen in time, and felt the walls of her world not just crumble, but turn actively, intelligently against her. The parking garage threat hadn't been hyperbole. It was a blueprint, and she was trapped inside it. The silence in Sarah's apartment was no longer sterile. It was thick, suffocating, pregnant with dread. The photograph lay on her cheap coffee table, her own unguarded image staring back, a snapshot of malice captured before the storm. Asterisk, evidence collection commenced. Asterisk, the words burned into her retinas. He hadn't just reacted. He'd been waiting, watching, documenting. The reckoning wasn't just underway. It was a meticulously constructed trap, and she'd walked right into it, blindfolded by her own hate. The immediate fallout was brutal. News of her termination spread through her professional circles like wildfire. Whispers turned into open condemnation on industry forums she lurked on. Emails from former colleagues offering support felt like thinly veiled probes for gossip. Her phone rang incessantly. Unknown numbers, blocked IDs. Paranoia became her constant companion. Was it reporters? Lawyers? Him? She stopped answering. Then came the official letter. Thick, expensive paper bearing the insignia of a prestigious law firm she recognized only from news articles about corporate takeovers. It arrived by registered mail, demanding signature. Her hand shook so violently she could barely hold it. It was a formal notice of intent to sue. James Thorne, through his lawyers, was suing Sarah Miller for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and malicious prosecution stemming from her false police report. The demanded damages were astronomical, a number so large it blurred before her eyes, representing not just money, but the utter annihilation of her future. Attached were exhibits, summaries of witness statements affirming her aggression, a copy of the police report highlighting the falsity of her claims, and chillingly, a time-stamped log referencing the security footage. Footage she knew showed her lies in stark, undeniable detail. The photograph on her table felt like Exhibit A in a terrifyingly large file. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. She needed a lawyer. Desperately. She spent frantic hours calling small firms, legal aid offices, anyone who might take her case. The conversations followed a grim pattern. Initial interest, then the inevitable questions. The CEO of Technova, James Thorne, the billionaire, followed by awkward pauses, mumbled excuses about conflict of interest, caseloads suddenly full, or the blunt truth. Ms. Miller, against that kind of power and evidence, your resources realistically. The line would go dead, or a polite refusal would land in her email. Doors were slamming shut, one by one, locked from the outside by the invisible hand of James Thorne's influence. He wasn't just suing her. He was isolating her, ensuring she had no defense. 3 days after the lawsuit landed, the knock came. Firm, authoritative, not the tentative tap of a neighbor. Sarah froze mid-pace, her heart hammering against her ribs. Peering through the fisheye lens, she saw the unmistakable dark blue uniforms. Police. 2 officers, different from the ones at the office. Their expressions were grim, professional. With numb fingers, she unchained the door and opened a crack. Yes. Sarah Miller, the older officer asked, his voice devoid of inflection. Yes, she whispered. Ma'am, we need you to come down to the station for questioning regarding an incident reported on Tuesday at Technova Solutions. Specifically, concerning the false report you made alleging harassment and threats by James Thorne. The cold, formal words stripped away any lingering denial. Questioning? But I already gave a statement. New evidence has come to light, ma'am, the younger officer stated, his gaze steady, penetrating. Evidence that significantly contradicts your initial account. We strongly advise you to cooperate and come with us voluntarily. You are entitled to have a lawyer present. A lawyer. Asterisk, the words were a cruel joke. She had no lawyer. The officer's presence, The mention of new evidence. It screamed James Thorne's orchestration. He wasn't just suing her. He was pushing for criminal charges. He was turning the system she'd tried to weaponize into a crushing vice. The ride to the station was a blur of gray streets and suffocating silence. The interview room was small, cold, smelling of stale coffee and disinfectant. The detectives were polite but relentless. They laid out the security footage transcripts, highlighting her aggressive posture, her escalating voice. They read Maya Sharma's statement verbatim, emphasizing Maya's fear and confusion during Sarah's attack. They presented the police report, pointing out the inconsistencies between her hysterical 911 call and the calm scene described by the responding officers and witnesses. Ms. Miller, the lead detective, leaned forward, his eyes sharp. This footage shows you initiating the confrontation. Multiple witnesses state Mr. Thorne was calm and non-threatening throughout. Your call to emergency services described imminent threats and aggression that simply aren't supported by any evidence we've gathered. In fact, all evidence points to you being the aggressor. Can you explain this discrepancy? Sarah's mind raced, scrabbling for purchase. He manipulated them. He's a CEO. He's powerful. He made them lie. He intimidated Maya. The detective's expression didn't change. Ms. Sharma came forward willingly. She was clearly distressed by your actions, Ms. Miller. The security footage is time-stamped, unedited. It shows what it shows. He paused, letting the weight of the evidence sink in. Making a false report to the police is a serious offense. It wastes valuable resources and can have devastating consequences for the person falsely accused. Why did you do it, Ms. Miller? The question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. The real answer, her deep-seated racism, her visceral dislike of James's confidence, his very presence, was unspeakable in this sterile room. She couldn't voice it. Instead, she clammed up, muttering, "I want a lawyer." But the request sounded hollow, desperate, even to her own ears. They knew she didn't have one. They kept her for hours, repeating questions, presenting the damning evidence again and again. The walls felt like they were closing in. The reckoning James promised wasn't just financial or professional ruin. It was this, the slow, grinding humiliation of the legal process, the exposure of her lies under the cold, unforgiving light of evidence he had meticulously gathered. He wasn't just taking her job or her money. He was dismantling her version of reality, brick by painful brick. Finally, drained and trembling, she was released. No charges yet, they said, but the investigation was ongoing. They strongly suggested she secure legal representation immediately. The unspoken message was clear. Criminal charges were a distinct, terrifying possibility. Walking out of the police station into the fading afternoon light felt like emerging into an alien world. The city bustled on, indifferent. She felt hollowed out, scraped raw. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. An email notification. The sender address was cryptic, impersonal. The subject line was blank. With a sinking feeling, she opened it. There was no text, only another attachment. A video file. Her thumb hovered over it, a fresh wave of terror washing over her. What new horror had James Thorne unearthed? Taking a shuddering breath, she pressed play. The video was grainy, taken from a distance, likely a phone. It showed her, months ago, in the Technova break room. She was talking animatedly to a small group of colleagues. Linda from marketing, Tom from sales. The audio was slightly muffled, but her voice, sharp and disdainful, was unmistakable. And honestly, the way some people just expect everything handed to them now, she was saying. Her lip curled in a familiar sneer. Like that new guy in accounting? James. Comes in acting like he owns the place, barely says 2 words. Probably got the job through some quota, you know? Doesn't even try to fit in. Thinks his background entitles him to special treatment. Makes you wonder what strings were pulled. Linda nodded sympathetically. Tom shifted uncomfortably, but stayed silent. The venom in Sarah's own voice, the casual, ugly prejudice laid bare, made her physically recoil. She remembered this conversation. She remembered feeling smug, validated by Linda's agreement. The video ended abruptly. Below it, in the body of the email, were 2 lines of text. Pattern recognition established. Asterisk, asterisk. Public perception management. Phase 1 initiated. Sarah slumped against her car, the world tilting violently. It wasn't just about yesterday. He had proof of her pattern. Her history of toxic whispers, of casual racism festering beneath the surface. Public perception management. What did that mean? Was he going to release this? Release everything? Ruin not just her present, but drag her past into the light, painting her for the world as the vindictive, racist bully she truly was? The parking garage threat echoed anew. Asterisk, I'm going to show you how that system really works. Asterisk, he wasn't just using lawyers and police. He was weaponizing public opinion, armed with irrefutable proof of her own hatred. The reckoning wasn't confined to courtrooms or HR offices anymore. James Thorne was preparing to unleash it on the world, and Sarah Miller was trapped at the center, watching her carefully constructed facade crumble into dust, piece by damning piece. The silence around her was no longer just oppressive. It was the quiet before a very public storm. The email notification vibrated against Sarah's leg like a live wire. She stared at the screen. The words public perception management, phase 1 initiated, seeming to pulse with malevolent energy. The grainy video of her break room rant felt like a branding iron searing her soul. He wasn't just coming for her job, her money, or her freedom. James Thorne was coming for her very identity, meticulously stripping away the thin veneer of respectability to expose the rotten core beneath. For 3 days, the silence was worse than any noise. The lawsuit papers lay untouched on her table, a monument to her impending financial doom. The threat of criminal charges hung like a storm cloud. She barely ate, barely slept, jumping at every notification, every creak in her old apartment building. She avoided social media, terrified of what she might see. The world outside felt like a minefield. Then, on the 4th morning, the dam broke. Her phone, perpetually on silent, lit up with frantic notifications. Not calls, but a relentless barrage of social media alerts, news app pings, and text messages. Her stomach twisted into a knot of pure dread. With trembling fingers, she opened Twitter. Her name was trending, not just locally, nationally. The hashtag #TechNovaRacist exploded at the top of the list. Heart pounding, she clicked. The top result was a meticulously crafted thread from an anonymous account named @ Truth at Work. It opened with the grainy break room video, her voice sharp and dripping with contempt, talking about James. Asterisk probably got the job through some quota, thinks his background entitles him. Asterisk the caption beneath was stark. Sarah Miller, former Technova employee, expressing her true feelings about a black colleague months before her false police report. Bile rose in Sarah's throat. The comments were a tsunami of outrage. Thousands of them, condemning her, dissecting her words, demanding consequences. Asterisk disgusting. Fire her everywhere. This is textbook racism. Lock her up. Asterisk. Scrolling down, the thread continued. Screenshots. Not doctored, but horrifyingly real. Text message exchanges she'd forgotten about, complaining to a friend about diversity hires, lowering standards, mocking cultural events. Private messages from a now-defunct forum she'd used years ago, filled with crude stereotypes and rants. How? How had he found these? The anonymity she'd felt behind her keyboard was obliterated. James Thorne, with his resources, had dredged up her digital past, painting a damning picture of sustained, casual bigotry. Then came a coup de grace. Not just the security footage transcript from the confrontation, but a link to a heavily redacted legal document, the lawsuit filing. Headlines screamed alongside it. Secret CEO sues former employee for vicious false accusation. Billionaire James Thorne targeted in racist smear campaign. Articles from major news outlets detail the events, framing her not as a misguided individual, but as a malicious racist who weaponized the police against an innocent black man who happened to own the company. The narrative was set in stone. Powerful, respected CEO versus the venomous, lying racist. Her phone rang. It was Mark. She answered, a sob catching in her throat. Mark. Sarah, what the hell is going on? His voice wasn't concerned. It was furious, bewildered. My phone is blowing up. People are sending me links, videos. That's you? Talking like that? And you accuse your boss? A billionaire? Of harassment? Are you out of your mind? Mark, it's not. It's twisted. He set me up. She stammered, the lies sounding pathetic even to her own ears. Set you up? Sarah, I heard you on that video. I saw those texts. That's you. That's how you really think. His voice cracked with disbelief and disgust. Did you really call the police on that man because he's black? Because he was helping someone? Mark, please. Mom. A small, confused voice piped up in the background. Ben. Her heart shattered. Dad's really mad. He said you did something bad on the computer. About a black man? Mark's voice came back, thick with emotion. He saw a headline on a tablet at school, Sarah. His friend saw it. They asked him why his mom hates black people. The raw pain in his voice was worse than any legal threat. I'm taking the kids to my mom's. Tonight. I need space. We all do. Don't call. The line went dead. Sarah dropped the phone, collapsing onto the floor, racked by silent, heaving sobs. The last anchors of her life, her family, were cut loose. James Thorne hadn't just exposed her to the world. He'd ensured her own children saw the ugliness inside her. The days that followed were a descent into a special kind of hell. Job applications vanished into a void. Recruiters who'd previously been eager now ghosted her calls. Her LinkedIn profile became a battleground of condemnation. Old friends publicly distanced themselves online. The few who called offered awkward condolences, their voices laced with unspoken judgment. She was radioactive. The lawsuit moved forward with terrifying speed. With no lawyer willing to touch her case against Thorne Industries' legal juggernaut, she was defenseless. Default judgment loomed, meaning the court would likely award James everything he asked for without a fight. The astronomical damages would bankrupt her for life. The police investigation concluded. The district attorney's office, armed with the overwhelming evidence, the security footage, the witness statements, the undeniable proof of her false report, decided to press charges. Sarah Miller was formally charged with filing a false police report, a misdemeanor carrying potential jail time, fines, and a permanent criminal record. The mugshot, when it inevitably came, would be the final nail in her public coffin. One bleak afternoon, huddled on her couch in the oppressive silence, the TV droned in the background. A financial news channel. And there he was, James Thorne. Not in the shadows of a parking garage, but seated in a plush studio, being interviewed about Technova's latest innovation. He looked calm, authoritative, impeccably dressed. The picture of success and resilience. The interviewer, smiling respectfully, broached the sensitive topic. Mr. Thorne, many of our viewers have followed the difficult situation involving a former employee. Without commenting on the ongoing legal matters, could you share how Technova is moving forward? James leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but composed. Thank you for asking. What happened was deeply regrettable. It was a painful reminder that bias and prejudice still exist, even in environments where they shouldn't. Technova has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and harassment in any form. We acted swiftly and decisively based on the evidence to protect our employees and uphold our values. His gaze met the camera directly. Moving forward, we're doubling down on inclusive hiring, comprehensive bias training, and fostering a culture where every employee feels safe, respected, and valued for their contributions, regardless of background. We learn from these experiences. We become better. The studio audience applauded. The interviewer nodded solemnly. James Thorne wasn't just the victim. He was the heroic CEO leading his company through adversity, championing inclusivity. The narrative was complete, polished, and utterly devastating. Sarah stared at the screen, the man who had orchestrated her total ruin speaking about values and safety. The cold, controlled fury he'd shown in the garage was gone, replaced by this statesman-like gravitas. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't threatened violence. He had simply dismantled her life with the ruthless efficiency of a master strategist, using her own hatred, her own lies, as the blueprint. He had turned her into a cautionary tale and emerged stronger, more respected. The interview ended. A promo for the next segment flashed. Silence crashed back into the apartment, heavier than ever. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of everything. Her career, her reputation, her savings, her family, her future, all gone. Reduced to legal filings, viral shame, and the echoing emptiness of this room. She looked around at the cheap furniture, the packed boxes she hadn't had the energy to move. This was her kingdom now, a barren wasteland of her own making. James Thorne's revenge wasn't loud or bloody. It was absolute. It was the crushing weight of consequences meticulously delivered. He had shown her exactly how the system worked when wielded by someone with power, patience, and proof. The reckoning wasn't just over. It was her new, inescapable reality. She was free, in the most horrifying way possible, free to live in the desolate ruins of the life her prejudice had built. The only sound was the frantic, terrified beating of her own heart, echoing in the hollow victory of her silence.